Gina Tell. Welcome back to my channel. I'm so excited today. It's been a while since I've done a video. I've had a ton of stuff going on in January, and I am so excited because this video is a special video because I have my new rulers. I'm so excited. So I'm going to show them all to you now, just briefly talk about them a second, and then I'm going to show you how to use them. So the first ruler is called the Scant Trimmer. I have designed this to help you trim your quilts after you've done either the long arm quilting or quilting on your standard machine. You can quilt it this is just for trimming it after it's been quilted. Whether it's a mini quilt or a large quilt or anything that will work for any size quilt. And so I've called it the Scant Trimmer because this is a tool to help you trim so that it is exactly the same size when you trim it all the way around. And it has a scant 1/4 of an inch lip on it. And so it's similar to an add a quarter ruler, if you're familiar with that from paper piecing. It has a little lip on it also, and that's for doing your 1/4 inch on paper piecing. And so this is similar, but it's a scant 1/4 of an inch. So it's a little bit smaller because you don't need quite a 1/4 of an inch when you're trimming your quilts. So the Scant Trimmer is super fun. I would love for you to try it if you are a long arm quilter. I do a lot of trimming, and so that's where it's come from. And I do have the QR code on here, so once you purchase them, you can just scan the little QR code. It'll take you directly to my YouTube channel. And so it's a great ruler. I've been using it for some other things. It's 20 inches long and 3 inches. So, and then the Scant Trimmer has a best friend called the Binding Boss. And so these two rulers are meant to be used together. So you can purchase them as a set, or you can purchase them individually if you'd like. You can purchase them on my website. It's thread-graffiti.com, and I'll link it down below. And since I'm a long arm quilter full-time, you'll find a long arm tab, and you'll also find an online shopping tab where you can purchase this stuff. Or some of my sassy t-shirts. I have some t-shirts on there as well. So this is the beginning of my rulers. I'm also going to be stocking some thread bundles soon. I have a ton of people ask me about thread, what I use, and the needles that I use, and so it's going to be kind of a beginner combo sort of thing, because throughout the rest of this year, I'm going to really work on some introductory videos into long arm quilting. I had a real hard time when I first started learning some stuff and finding the tools to learn those things. So I'm going to start from the beginning and kind of show y'all later in the year on this channel some long arm things. So I'm really excited. The Binding Boss I dreamt this up years ago because I hated math. And I was terrible at binding, and it would just frustrate me so bad because I couldn't get the mitered corners. I couldn't figure out how to get it right. It was uneven, and my lines were all funky and wonky, and I just got so frustrated. So this is something that I designed because you don't need to use any math. You just slap it on after you've trimmed it, and this little guy helps you with the corners. It helps you with finding where you want to place your mitered seams and those sort of things. So these two are a great combo together, and so I'd love for you to purchase them both together. When you do so, they're going to come in the mail like this. This is the packaging, and this has both rulers in it. And if you buy them individually, they'll also come. The Binding Boss will come obviously in a smaller package, but this has both of them packed in there. So this is how it's going to look. I do also want to mention that when you buy them, they come with paper on the back of them. And when I first started quilting, I didn't realize the paper was supposed to come off. And so I would try it, and I'd look at it, and I didn't really see any place where it came off. And so I used it for a while with paper on. So don't be like me. Take the paper off. They work better. So anyway, that's that. So let's get into it. So this quilt is from it's called the Perfect Picnic Quilt. It is a free pattern by Ruby Star, and I will link it down on the bottom if you want to make it. Super simple, very easy. It's just 5-inch squares, really easy. And so I made it real quick, and I loaded it on the long arm. and I quilted it out. I used a Carly Porter pantograph. It is called the Flower Chain, and it's a really fun pantograph. And so I have completed this on the long arm, and now we're going to use the tools and we're going to trim it, and then we're going to add the binding on, and I'm going to show you all the tricks for my new rulers. So I hope that you will check it out. I'm going to break this video into probably 2 or 3, so if you're watching the first one, please make sure that you check out some of the further ones as you get a little further into which rulers we're using. So please check those out as well. And I would love for you to subscribe and check these out. So let's get started. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the quilt just a minute before I show you the cutting. So when I quilt, there's always a little bit of the pantograph that goes over. I just do that just to make sure that I catch all the edges. So when we're trimming, we're trimming all the layers. So I've had questions on a couple of other times when I've shared how I trim mine, and I'm just trimming the whole thing. So here's the back, and here's the batting and the center, the quilt top. We're just quilting the whole thing. So we're going to lay it on our table. And this was 108, so I had a ton of extra fabric, 108-inch wide backing. So that's what we're going to do here. So we now have the backing, the batting, and the top, the whole sandwich here on the counter, and now we're going to start trimming it. Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to show you on the ruler is that there's a little lip on the end of it. So there's not a lip on one side, but there is a lip on the other side. So that's the side that you're going to put up to your quilt, and because it has the lip, it's going to kind of stop right at your quilt edge. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take the ruler, we're going to line it right up with the edge of the quilt top, and you can pull it just a little bit like that to make your line straight. And then you're just going to take your ruler or your rotary cutter and you're going to trim it. And so I trim it beyond, and I'm going to trim this whole thing so we can get it out of the way. Okay, so now the amount that's left over is the amount of the scant 1/4 inch, and so we cut all the way through all the sides. So we just took the ruler and we cut it through all of the 3 sides. So without moving the quilt, we're just going to do the exact same thing on the other side. So like I said, if there's a little spot that's pulling a little bit, you can just kind of tug it just a little bit. So we're going to take the ruler lip and we're going to line it right up with the edge of the fabric of your quilt top, and then we're going to trim. And so that leaves us a scant 1/4 inch all the way around, and it is the perfect amount for adding binding and filling up that little space for your binding. It looks great. So again, put our little lip up to the edge of your quilt top, and because there's a lip, it's just going to kind of stop right there. And then we just keep going and going. So I'm going to show you the back again. So we're just cutting through all 3 layers. Okay, so we have trimmed one side and we are to the corner here. So I just trim it past the corner. And then when the camera is not here, I normally flip it and then start to trim. But I just want to show you. So what you want to do is just line up your ruler edge and line it up all the way across again. And then you can just trim your corner. I'm at kind of a funny angle. Okay, so that's what we're doing on all the corners so that you leave that extra. That's going to fill up your binding. Okay, so I'm going to show you close up a little bit. So here's the edge of our quilt, and then we have the lip right here. So we're just pushing the lip right up to the edge, and you can kind of just pull it a little bit to get it even. And then you're trimming, and you're trimming through all 3 layers. Okay, we're on our final corner here. We're just going to do the same thing. And then what I also do is I take the ruler and just lift it up a little bit, and then I I trim off the quilted part as well, so I can just throw that part away. Okay, we've used our scant trimmer, and now we are ready to add the binding. So I just wanted to show it to you again. So we have a scant 1/4 of an inch left all the way around the quilt top. And so there's what the back looks like. We're just lining it up with the quilt top, and now we are going to add our 2.5 inch strips of binding. So let's head on over to the Juki and get that done. Okay, so the way that we make our binding strips is we take the strip, so this is 2.5 inches, and you set it down with the good side facing up, and then the other one, the good side's facing down, and it's going to go the opposite direction. So you have one going this way and one going this way. Alright, so then we're going to set it down, and then we're going to take our ruler, and there's a little line on there, and we're going to line up with the side of the side of the fabric, and then we're going to make a line. And you can pin it if you want to. I don't anymore, but you can pin it. Just don't put the pin in the way of your line. And then I'm going to go to the machine, turn it on, and then we're going to stitch right on the line. I usually make sure that my stitch length is about 1.5 to 2, somewhere around there. That means that the stitches, that's the length of the stitches going that way. So then what we're going to do is then you can take your little binding boss and flip it over, and there's a little line to show a 1/4 of an inch. I didn't get it there. So that little line right there shows the 1/4 of an inch, and you can trim that right off. And then there's your 2 strips. And then once you sew all of them together, you will just fold that over and press it. And I like to press them open when I'm doing binding. And then once you press them with the iron, then you'll just fold it over this way and press it that way. And then you'll have one big long strip. So that's how you use the binding boss to make your strip pieces. And now we're going to attach it to the quilt. Okay, so we have our quilt top facing up, and when we do hand binding, that's how we want to do it. So we're going to take our binding strip, here's the raw edge, and we're going to place the raw edge directly on the quilt top. So we're not going to put it on the very edge of the whole thing. We're going to pull it in that so that you can see that scant 1/4 that we just trimmed. So the raw edge of your binding strip is going to line up with the raw edge of your quilt top. And so what you want to do is leave about this much between here and here. Leave about this much. That's about, I don't know, 9 or 10 inches. Leave about 9 or 10 inches left over on the top. And then that part doesn't really matter. Just leave enough that's about that much. So it doesn't have to be perfect. Alright, so now we're going to start stitching. And we're going to line up the raw edge with the raw edge of the quilt top. And then I usually go to about a stitch length of about a 3 for this. Alright, I'm going to stop and show you what we've done. So we now have the binding strip attached, and you can see that scant 1/4 of an inch, and when you fold it over, that scant 1/4 of an inch is going to fill up our binding. So it feels, you can feel all that, and then the edge, now the folded edge, is going to line up directly with the stitch that you're stitching on right now. So this stitch line that you just added, you're going to fold it over, and you're going to put that nice pretty folded edge over to that line, and that's how you're going to hand bind it when you turn it over. So that's what we're trying to accomplish, is a nice perfect binding that is completely filled with all of the backing and the batting so that there's not a space in there. So you can use a walking foot to add your binding strips. I would probably suggest it if you're just learning how it might be a little bit easier. I don't really use it much, but it is definitely, the walking foot has a little device in there that kind of helps it push, so you don't have to push it yourself. It kind of helps walk it, and so you can try that also. I'm just going with the distance, the 1/4 inch of my foot right here, so that's where I'm following. I just keep the edge of my foot at the edge of my raw edge. Okay, so now we're on the corner, and now we get to use the binding boss. Okay, we are now ready to do our next corner. And so I just want to make note that my basting stitch right here is not perfectly lined up. So it might look like it's crooked right there, but we're not worried about that basting stitch because it's going to get covered up, and if not, it can be easily pulled out. So we're going to line up our binding boss right here, and then again over here. And then we're going to mark out here onto the batting. That's our 1/4 inch. And then we're going to move it. We're going to bring our binding strip down, and then we're going to stop our needle right where that black dot is that we just made. Okay, so our needle is lined up with the black dot, so we're going to pull our presser foot out, and then we're going to rotate it a little bit, and then we are going to stitch right on the edge. So it's going to go right out to the corner, and then we're going to back stitch back to where we came from. And another thing that you can do if you're first just learning, if you would like to use, once you stop right here, you can stop and cut off your thread. Or you can make the line, you can line it up and make your line right there so you know where you're driving that last edge, but you want it to just come off on the corner. All right, and now we're going to flip it over. And so that's what it looks like, and then we're going to fold up our binding strip, and then I use my fingernails just to get it nice and mitered, and then we're going to pull this down to where we came from. It might be better on this other angle over here. So we're gonna fold it over, and then we're gonna line this back up with where we started, and then line it up over here, and then we'll put a pin in to keep it from wiggling. All right, and so now we're going to keep lining up our raw edge of the binding to the raw edge of the quilt top. And so now there's our little black dot up there. We're going to put our needle in just to the left of that black dot, back stitch, and pull our needle out. And then we have our good little miter. I usually do a little sneak peek just to make sure. Okay, we're to our last corner now, so we're going to do the same thing that we've been doing, lining our binding boss up, marking our 1/4 inch on the edge, bringing that binding strip down, we're going to stop in line with that black line, stitch out to the corner, back stitch to where you came from, and then cut your thread. Now we're going to fold it over, and then fold it over again, lining it back up. Okay, now we're gonna spin it around. Now if you look, mine's not quite, it is not quite straight, so that's not gonna give us a perfect miter. So we're gonna check that out. Okay, now we're good. Now we're gonna start right on that line, our little black line. And we're gonna peek over here, make sure we got it. And then we do, it looks good. All right, we're almost to the end. All right, so now here's where we started. So that's right here. And then here's where we're ending. And so we're not going to measure this. I'm just going to see that's about the perfect distance to stop. So right here, we're going to backstitch and cut our thread. And so what we're going to talk about now is putting our binding strips, putting them together. And so this space right here is about that same 10 inches or so. Yes, it's about 9 inches. So that's about the distance that you want to leave it. Like I said, it does not have to be a perfect amount. It can just be, this is just a nice, good amount that's easy to work with. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this piece of this strip over here and we're going to flatten it out, make it nice and flat. And then we are going to just fold it about halfway. Then we're going to do the same thing with this one. We're going to push it, and we want it to be nice and taut. We don't want it to be all rippled and, you know, whatever. So you want it to be, you want to pull it until it's nice and taut, but not completely stretched. And what we're going to do is we're going to have your two seams right there. So we want to squeeze them with your hands. So you want them to almost touch. And then what we're going to do, there's a couple of different ways you can do this. You can lay it out on the top, line up on the top right here, and put a line. Same thing with this side, and you can put a line. Or you can just lift it up and put your binding boss right there. And then you can just trim it with a pair of scissors. That's usually what I do, is I just pull it up and trim it. But you can use the binding boss and then make a little line. That line's not so good, is it? And then take it off and trim it. Okay, so we don't need the leftover binding. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to take it and we're going to do exactly the same thing we did when we made the binding strips. We're going to lay our strip this way, facing with the good side facing up, and then we're going to roll this over so that we kind of get rid of that bulk right there. And then we're going to do the same thing with this. We're going to open it, and then we're going to lay it on top of this guy. It's kind of a little hard to maneuver because I have a camera right here. However, this is what we're going to do. So we're going to lay it down. And if you didn't give yourself enough space, I'm going to back up a little bit. If you started to do this and you didn't give yourself enough space and it's too hard to maneuver and too hard to pull, what you can do is just take a seam ripper and rip a seam down here, pop a couple of seams out, and then you'll have enough room to kind of maneuver a little bit. So that's, I just thought I would show that to you. It doesn't really matter if you want to, if you can fold it over and just maneuver it, but that is something that you can do to make it a little bit easier.
Okay, so now I've folded folded the quilt over. We have our strip here we're going to face up, and then this strip right here we're going to face good side facing down on top of it. And what we're going to do is we're going to make a line from here over to the edge, same way that we did when we made the strip. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to pull it away and then flatten it out, and I'm going to use the binding boss to line up right there. Make sure you can see. So line it up right there, and I'm going to pull it over so I can, and then you're going to take your, take your pen. And so basically the reason why I fold it is because that's the center point right there when you fold it. And so that's the intersection. So when you fold this guy over here, there's the intersection right there. So you want those two intersections to meet up. So now we're gonna take this side, good side up, this side, good side down. And then you're just gonna move it over here and stitch it. And like I said, you can pin it, but there's our center intersection. And we're gonna stitch right on the line, and we're gonna line it right up with our red line there on our tape. And so there's our stitched piece. And now when we pull it, it should match up just perfect, and it does. So now what I do is I just pull that out. I just take a pair of scissors and trim it, throw that away. And then I open it up, and I use my nails to just kind of open it up a little bit. And then what you can do is you can take it right now to the iron and press it. And sometimes it's good to do that if you have a little bit of bulk, if it's a little bit wavy and you're not quite sure if it's going to be enough. I usually take the little roller. Sorry, it's a little shaky there. And then what you can do is, I'm not a big pinner, and I never have been, and I probably never will be. However, I do pin at this point because when you start to stitch, when you get to this bottom seam, sometimes it can go like that. And when you fold that over, you'll be able to see that little stitch. So we don't want that to happen. So I just pull it taut and pin a couple of times. And like I said before, if you take it to the iron and you put the iron right on top of it when it's like this, it'll kind of suck up some of that bulk just long enough for you to stitch it on there. But that's what I do. And you don't have to do this. Once you start doing it several times, you'll get pretty good at getting it exactly the right size. And then I'm going to go back over to where I started. I'm going to back stitch again, and I'm going to drive right over the pins. Oh my gosh, don't get me, you pin driver over people that don't like driving over the pins. Most of the time I take them out, but for this I don't. And then I drive right back over the seam, back stitch again, and then poof, pull out all these pins. And then we have it. And then when you go and press it, it will be perfect, and you didn't have to measure anything. So there's the little binding boss. It is great. All right, now I'm going to show you how to press it and get your mitered corners perfect. Okay, we're ready to press it. So what I do is I have my little reliable iron. It's this guy. And I really like it. I've had it for several months and I really like it. So I thought I'd just mention that since I'm using it here. I can link what I use down below. But there's no, it has the reservoir in there so it doesn't get steam. It doesn't drip any at all. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to press this side. I always start, I'm right-handed, so I always start on the right-hand corner. And then I just take the point of my iron. And I just stick it right on top. And then I just take it and fold it like that. And then I just keep pressing. All right, now we're over to the other corner. So I just press, and then right in the center, I just put the point of my iron right on there. And then it makes a perfect miter corner. There's a couple of things that you can do for the binding to make it a little bit easier. If you fold it over, well, not fold it over, flip it over. Okay, so now we have the backing. Now you're looking at the backing. If you go to the back side and you hold it right on the line and press it, it doesn't have to be a perfect press. It doesn't have to line up exactly, but when you sit down to do your binding, it helps a little bit if it's folded over. You can also, when I first started learning, I used to use a glue stick, and you can just stick a little bit of the glue right there in between, and then when you fold it over and use the iron and press it, the iron, the heat from the iron will activate that just Elmer's school glue, and it'll hold it over there long enough for you to either do your machine stitching, or it makes it a little bit easier just to keep it lined up when you're a beginner. So I don't use it anymore, but I did, I used to. So that is something that you might want to experiment and try. And so that's what we're doing. So now that stitch that we stitched down, that's what we've created a line to follow. And then it makes it real easy to do your hand stitching. Okay, and so for the corner, I'm going to show you, I always, for the corners, I start on the right side and I go up. And so once I use my fingernail and I kind of poke that edge in. I don't cut that edge off. You can if it's just too much, but I don't cut them off. So that's what you want to do. You get it lined up and then that way. And then that makes your miter on this side. So I'm not stitching it down right now, so it's, it's going to pull up obviously right here, but that's going to make your miter. And you can put your iron down, like I said, if you wanted to try to use the school glue. Let's see, it made a little bit of a wrinkle with the iron, but that's what you're doing. And then you have a perfect miter on both sides.
Okay, we're all finished. It looks so pretty. We did such a good job. All right, so we have our corners all ready. We've got it all pressed and ready to go. Now it's just time to go sit down and do some hand binding and watch some TV. And I am going to do a video showing how I hand bind this quilt. It'll be coming up soon, so if you want to subscribe and make sure you don't miss that next one. But here we are. So I wanted to really thank you for watching the video, and I would love for you to support me in my ruler venture and check them out. I think that they are really a good tool to use together to make perfect binding, and it was something that I used to get so frustrated with, and these tools have really helped me perfect my binding. So Please let me know if you have any questions, comments below. You can also follow me on Instagram and ask me some questions there, but please let me know what you have or what you think of it, and I hope that you have a fantastic rest of your day. Thanks a lot for watching.